The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Brian Morris from Binary Stream. With me is my colleague Don Ramsey, and we are here to talk about our brand new launch of multi-entity management, or MEM for short, for Business Central. This product, it's been in the works for probably about 2 years now, and we're very excited to bring it to you for the first time with the folks at the TM Group. All right, so I am an account manager here. I look after sales for Binary Stream for all of the TM Group's clients, and Don is our sales engineer. Just in terms of housekeeping, we do have everyone in listen-only mode. However, we are going to be taking questions at the end of the session, so if you have any, go ahead and log them to the chat or the Q&A panel. That would be terrific. Okay, so for today's agenda, I'll start off with some background about who we are at Binary Stream, and then we'll delve into exactly what MEM is, how it works, and how it can help you. To do that, I've constructed a quick sample company scenario with some real-world examples of the value that MEM can provide. Once that's done, I'll transition over to Don, and he'll conduct a live demo so you can actually see the product in action, and then we'll close it out with some Q&A. All right, let's get into it. So by way of background with Binary Stream, I know that some of you probably know us already through our work with the TM Group in the past. We come from a GP background. We've worked with the Great Plains product set for almost 20 years. In case our accents didn't give it away, we are Canadian, so yeah, that's us. We've been developing the GP products for nearly 20 years. That's where MEM first started. So currently it's got over 2,000 customers as a whole for our company, and about 70% of those customers use MEM in some way, shape, or form. I think it's safe to say that it's our flagship product, and we do have some expertise in this domain. What we want to do is help you maximize your investment within Dynamics and really get that tier 1 type functionality at a much more affordable price. So you can really extend the functionality of Business Central up into that top-end market in terms of the functionality with consolidated financials, etc. We'll get into some of the specifics in a second. The other thing to point out is that because we develop within the same code base, we use extensions. We look, act, and feel exactly like the stock Business Central product. Yes, there's a little bit of training, of course, that needs to be undertaken when you deploy MEM, but it's very intuitive. If you already know BC, it's not that much of a leap to jump into the BC with MEM. Okay. Here's a quick overview of the different solutions that we have. So today we'll be talking about the Business Central for MEM in the middle column there at the top. We also have our subscription billing suite available for the Business Central platform, and we're also going to be bringing over both property management and healthcare materials management to that platform as well. So we're definitely in that transitional phase from taking everything from GP into the more modern products of the future, both Business Central as well as F&O. So what is MEM? I think the simplest way of defining it is that it's a product that will allow organizations with multiple business units to run them inside one single Business Central company. We accomplish that by using the extensions, which allows us not only to handle the intercompany transactions themselves, but also provide some extra security if needed. Not everyone does, but if you do need to restrict access, we have many ways of doing that. Because everything is centralized, the reporting then becomes a lot more streamlined, and clients have the tools to make better, more informed business decisions, of which we'll share a couple of examples. So here's a quick overview of the architecture. Now this schematic that you're looking at represents the native Business Central functionality without MEM. So this represents someone, in this case, we very creatively called their companies, company A, B, and C. They've got 3 different business units that are outlined by those green dotted rectangles there. They have not only 3 different ones, if you squint even a bit further, you'll see that they each maintain their own customer master file list. So company A has its own vendors, B has its own vendors, as does C, etc., up until Z, or Z if you're Canadian. What that means is there's a lot of ways where the information can get out of sync. You could easily have the same vendor be set up 5, 10, 20 times within the whole organization, all as separate master file records that have no connection to one another. That's not best practices. And additionally, the reporting that has to take place, you need to create that dummy company over on the right-hand side, the business unit, to be able to enable consolidated reporting and then change it each time. So there's a little bit of overhead and work that needs to go into it to really have a true multi-company environment inside of Business Central. That's the stock functionality. Let's instead take a look at what Binary Stream offers. This is our version. So if you look now at the green dots, we just have that one company that's set up that represents all of the different business units that you have. They get separated within the product using the global dimensions field. But as mentioned, that's a very secure method of doing it. One of the byproducts of this is that you do have the ability to just have the single master file record. So all the vendors are in there, and then you can decide as the system administrator who should have access to what. Up at the top in the orange there, you'll see that we have MEM filtering and security. That's the additional layer that I alluded to earlier. That's essentially the traffic cop. It's going to stop people when they're trying to make a query or do a transaction. It's going to look up and see, okay, yes, you're an authorized Business Central user, but do you also have access level to see this specific vendor or this specific transaction because it's not part of your home company? If you do, it'll grant it. If not, you won't even see it, even on the drop-down list. So very tight security. Okay, so let's take a look at a sample company that we've set up. This is not a real name, but it's an amalgamation of a few different people that we've talked to over the last 20 years. So we've called them Rising Star Holdings. Let's pretend, if you will, that they are a fast food franchising company that has almost 400 locations of different fast food chains across North America. Let's right now focus on the 360 that they have within the continental US. What type of challenges might they have as a result of that many companies within Business Central? Well, a few that are obvious are the reporting, right? You want to be able to drill down on the individual store location, maybe the region, how's the Southwest doing versus the Northwest, or as an entire enterprise and see all of the US or all of North America. That's a challenge, as we just showed in the previous slide with the native reporting capabilities. Also, how do you handle the transactions across the different locations? There's a ton of do to, do froms that could result from having that many companies. A lot of manual work. And finally, how do they scale? Right now they have 400, but 2 years ago, they only had 180 locations. They're fast growing. They could open up more stores organically, or more likely, acquire a smaller franchise group and easily get up to 800 or 1,000 stores in the next 10 years. They're ill-equipped to handle that out of the box with the standard functionality. We can provide a better way forward. So let's take a look at the very first one that I mentioned with respect to managing those transactions. Let's take a look at insurance. For the 360 different US stores, it's very inefficient and unlikely that you're going to have each different store manager or regional manager even negotiate their own insurance payments. You're going to have head office do it with a national insurer on all 360 locations to get the best possible price. What that means is you're just going to be paying one check for however knows how many million to that to the insurance company from head office. But without MEM, that means that you would need to manually do 360 expense allocations to make sure that that portion of the expense gets transferred over to the store and the do to, do from takes place. A lot of manual work. What we can do, and in fact, as you'll see in the demo, is we can create an allocation template where by percentage, each store will have their own portion of that transaction. It could be an equal percentage. It could be a manual one based on square footage or gross sales. Whatever makes sense to you, it can be set up and applied within MEM. Here's a quick overview of what that looks like within the Business Central. There's a lot of steps. Within the Business Central plus MEM, far fewer steps. Just really create that template, and of course there can be multiple ones, apply it to the transaction, and you're done. So for the second goal that we wanted to talk about, how do you keep an eye on performance of the individual stores or by region? As we talked about, it's a cumbersome process to create those dummy reporting companies and then run them within Business Central. Within MEM, it's just simply a parameter that you set at the runtime, and it makes it much easier. So I know that you all know the benefits of saving time, but one area that I'd like to point out is it can give you better insight, as per that second bullet point there, and you can make better, more timely decisions. What am I talking about? Well, here's an example. Let's suppose that out of those 360 US stores, you notice that 200 of them are all doing business with the same janitorial service, Acme Janitorial. They're spending, say, $5 million with them in aggregate. Because this information can easily be discerned within the MEM interface, you can then flex some corporate muscle, approach Acme, and negotiate a better rate because they're doing so many stores and so much volume. You could probably get a 10 or 20% savings just by asking. That's some real world savings that go beyond just ease of use and error prevention, although of course we do those too. Again, just a comparison, as you can see, far fewer steps within our world. And the third scenario, okay, we're back. The third goal that I'll get into before we get into the demo is security and growth. So remember the scenario that I just talked about with Acme Janitorial? Let's suppose that you go ahead and decide to actually purchase them and integrate them into part of your supply chain. What happens there? Within MEM, it's a very easy thing. All you have to do is define that extra global dimension, make up essentially an account segment to represent that new company, Acme Janitorial, and then set them up within the system. So apply the different security settings, etc. In this case, because Acme is a slightly different business unit, right? They're a service provider rather than an actual restaurant themselves. They might have some different security permissions. Maybe they can't see the other location's financials, whereas some of the other general managers can. Very easy to set that up. You can do it without having to call us or call the folks at the TM group. We cover that as part of the training for the product. It's essentially going to make that onboarding process as simple as possible. I talked about one specific company, Acme, being acquired, but it could just as easily be another chain. Maybe you acquire 50 restaurants in one fell swoop. You can have those set up before the day is done inside of the system. And again, just to compare how that works within Business Central natively versus MEM, here's a quick chart that has a comparison. So we do provide that extra flexibility and security in terms of restricting access by entity, by item, by class within the system. All right, so I've been talking a lot about it, but as they say, seeing truly is believing. So I think at this point, I will pass it over to Don Ramsey. Don, I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter, and you can share your screen.
All right.
And you should have control now.
You should be able to see my screen just momentarily.
There it is. Yep, we're good to go.
All right, excellent. All right, so we're going to walk through for a few minutes, folks, how to set up MEM to begin with, and then I'll go through the scenarios that Brian talked about in his presentation. We'll show how easy it is to do the types of functionality that he was talking about. So first of all, we want to add companies. We're going to use a global dimension to represent our companies in the instance. So let's go take a look at dimensions. We'll pop that up first. All right, so I've got my dimensions, and we'll just go to the regular dimensions. This is standard Business Central, nothing different here. This particular dimension right here, the company dimension, is actually global dimension 1. So if I take a look at the details, the values, you'll notice that I've got company 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I've got them named and so on and so forth. Now, if I want to add a brand new company to an existing BC install with MEM enabled, watch how difficult it is to do. Well, that company 500, I gotta learn how to spell, yep. Okay. And we'll tab off that, and I have just added company 500 to my BC install with MEM, simply by adding that global dimension value and typing in a name for it, and away I go. And you'll see that as we walk through the rest of the setup. I'll leave that active for now. Understand that right now, nothing's happening with it. We haven't done anything. We've just simply created the ability to have Southeast Enterprises as one of our companies. Now, if I go back to company 0, and I go to the details of company 0, the functions here, you'll notice in the middle, we've stuck our MEM entity setup. If I click on that, you'll see where I can have my legal name for this global dimension 1 function here. I can have a tax registration number, I can have a logo, and without getting into the details of it, you see I've got billing information and shipping information. At this point, that's all I need to do. I am ready to go and do some work. So let's back out of here all together and leave that company sitting there, and we're going to see it in several places as we process the rest of the security and configuration for the product. Now I'm going to go through the change setup all the way down to the bottom here where it says multi-entity management setup. And I'm going to go through this in the keystroke by keystroke by keystroke method so you can actually see the flow of the change setup window. But understand that the shortcuts, mem-user or mem/master or mem/inter for intercompany, all will work as well. We'll go to multi-entity management by itself. And as I said, we've taken global dimension 1, which you just saw, I took a look at, and I added another company to it. Once we've chosen that, we can turn around and add the corporate level of security that we will need because we're no longer running in separate universes, if you will, in the same database. We've got everybody in the same world, all working together, all these multiple companies. So we need to add an appropriate level of security for you. So we can enable customer security, items, warehouse locations, vendors, bank accounts. Not only that, but users as well. But we can lock it down so tight because we're only going to have one set of master records for vendors, one set of master record for customers, and so on and so forth. But we're going to share, or not, those records with other companies. We need to make sure that we only share with whom we want to share with, and we restrict whom we want to restrict. And that's what this is all about here. And we're going to see the detail of these tabs in just a couple of minutes. We can also, if I go down to our discount functionality here, when we look at an actual invoice document, whether it be purchase or sale invoice, you're going to notice that there's the ability to have a discount at the header level or a discount at the line level. Now that might not make a lot of sense right now, but when we do take a look at one of these documents, just keep that in mind, that we're going to have 2 places where we can recognize a discount, 2 places where different companies can take up different parts of the discount or all of the discount. And we can also, of course, lock down our locations, our warehouses, very, very tightly if we want to. We can say only the company that owns the warehouse can see it, or maybe we'll share that warehouse with a few other companies, doesn't have to be all, and they can see it and use it as well, but there's a price to be paid if they take product out of that warehouse. The do to do froms will come into effect in that particular area. So basic high-level configuration of the main window, multi-entity management. Again, as I said, we'll go down to the click and click and click aspect of this. Multi-entity management at the bottom. We'll take a look at user entity security. Now here is where I guess the rubber starts to meet the road in the sense of configuration and locking things down tightly. You'll notice I've got it done by user here right now. The Maritime Regional Manager can only see Company 2. By the way, you'll notice Company 5 that I added there in 30 seconds or less? There it is. I can actually give access to that if I want to. General Manager, Company 1 and 2, me, the admin guy, I can see everybody, but you'll notice I can't see Company 5 yet because I haven't given myself access to that. If I did, I could start doing transactions right now in Company 5. Now, if I'm using it from the point of view of the company, I can do a bit of a pivot table here, twist this around, and now I'm looking at the company over here on the left, and just by clicking on a company, I can see who has access to it. I think it was Company 2 that had all of us, right? It's Company 1 had 2 of us, I believe, and then Company 3 only had the 1 of us, and so on and so forth. In Southeast, nothing's been assigned there yet, as we already talked about a couple of minutes ago. So this is where you start to lock down the security on the user level so that they can sign in to Business Central. And in fact, there might be 20, 30 companies sitting in their instance. But in reality, the only companies they will see are the companies you assign right here. And when I say see, I mean transactions, inquiries, running reports. Those companies simply will not exist as far as this regional manager is concerned. Company 2 is the only one in the database. Eastern, Company 1 and 2, the only ones in the database, and so on and so forth. So that's where MEM takes over and starts restricting access at that level. Go back to the setup again. We just have a couple more to look at here. The master records we talked about a few minutes ago. I'm going to have one set of records for customers, one set of records for vendors, items, locations, and bank accounts. So looking at the customer aspect of it. Company 0, well, as you can see, I guess for demo purposes, I've left it pretty wide open as far as access is concerned. But company 1, wow, no checkboxes here. So let's go up to the top. They can see a few of the customers. Company 2 can also see maybe just a couple of customers and so on and so forth. So again, because we've only got one set of master records, we don't have to duplicate. We don't have to have a set of master records every single time we add a company. That saves you a tremendous amount of work and also increases your accuracy of data on the company or vendors or bank accounts or items or warehouse setup that you have to do. All you do here is check or uncheck and access is granted or taken away, as simple as that. And of course, once again, like you just saw a few minutes ago, I can flip this around and look at it from the customer or vendor point of view and see what companies they have access to. So very quick and easy to take a look at two different aspects of this and go ahead and change the configuration to a way that suits you and the way you are doing business at that point in time. Main setup, user entity access, the master records. This is a function that Brian talked about in his, I believe it was his first scenario, where he talked about taking an insurance bill and allocating it across multiple companies at one point in time. And a number of benefits from doing that. One is it's a simple one-time transaction. The other one is accessing the information. Much more information is available to you with MEM installed in BC than would be with all the different worlds that you have in just simply basic Business Central. Now let's open up this allocation. You'll notice in here, I've got company 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the allocation. Just in case you don't remember, company 0 is also one of my companies, and company 5, which we're going to ignore for now, but it's not here. Now, if you look at my total of my allocation, I got 32%, 42, 52, 55, 70% allocated. I've got 30% left over. It's interesting. Here's what's going to happen if you decide to do something like this. If I was doing a transaction for company 0, and I put this insurance allocation on that invoice, it would take the 70% you see here, allocate the 70% to these 4 companies, and the balance would be allocated to company 0. It's still going to be allocated fully at 100%, but the math works that way. Now, let's say company 0 is not participating whatsoever. Let's say that the invoice is for company 100. Company 100, then you add the allocation, this insurance allocation template. Now you've got 70% already allocated. Company 100 would also pick up the other 30%. So 45% in this case would be allocated to company 100. And the same math logic would apply if you use 200, 300, or 400, and so on and so forth. Now I'm showing you this only for illustrating that you do not have to create an allocation that's going to generate 100%. You can do less than 100%. Can't do more, but you can do less. But I could also have made company 0 in here, put the 30% for them, and away I go, and it's a fixed allocation no matter which company is processing the document. That's the real easy way. I wanted to show you some of the flexibility you have, some of the complicated ways or complications you can come up with and say, oh, because I have these variables on a regular basis, I want to have that variable available to me. And this is one of the options for doing that. If I back out of here, you'll notice we can do the same thing for our revenue allocation. We had a client say to us, look, when I sell certain services, some of it's got to go to professional services, some of it's got to go to an implementation team, some of it's got to go to HR, and some of it's got to go to the sales team. I want that allocated automatically all the time, and right now we're doing it manually or we're doing it on spreadsheets and then making journal entries. Well, now you can simply have a revenue allocation, and it's so simple. You notice it's just the company code. There's nothing else. There's no GL account needed here. There's no other dimensions needed here. These are the dimensions that matter as far as allocating expenses or revenue to different companies. In this case, it just happens to add up to 100%. So very, very easy to create these. As you can see, have as many of them as you like, and they can be modifiable as far as the ratios at the transaction level. It won't change what you've got here, but if for some reason you have a typical allocation that you're using, and in this particular transaction it has to be altered, fine. Alter at the transaction level. It'll leave the numbers alone here when you're doing and processing your transactions. So that's very, very simple structure there. We're going to walk down through maybe one or two more, and then we'll start looking at some actual activity, which might be a little more interesting to you. We haven't talked about this yet. Because we're putting all our companies in one world, one universe, we're not going to have BC anticipating do to do froms, because as far as it's concerned, there's only one company. But as far as multi-entity is concerned, you've got many companies sitting in that one instance. So let's do a comparison here. Company 0, for example, click on that one. Obviously, company 0 to company 0, meaningless. But if I pick company 100, you'll notice I have a set of do to do froms. Now, this might look like a segmented account structure, account with what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 4 segments. It isn't. I've just decided to make this account number reflect what I'm doing with it. Intercompany, company 0 owes company 100. Intercompany, company 0 is owed from company 100, and so on and so forth. So you'll see 0 and 100 all through these. If I go to 200, you'll see 0 and 200 all through these, and so on and so forth. No matter what combination I look at, if I go to 400 and I go to 200, you notice it's 400 and 200 and so on and so forth. That's me as an accountant. I want it to be very, very unique. I want my do to the froms to be very easy to trace. So that's how I set it up. Once you set this up, it's up to multi-entity from now on to recognize whenever a transaction is crossing reporting companies. Once it does that, it will populate these do to the froms as appropriate. Now, if you're sitting here looking at this and saying, oh man, but I got 50 companies, how am I going to keep track of all the setup? Up here on the import button, you can create an XML file, put all your different account numbers in there, your relationships in there, and simply import it and pre-populate this. I personally, when I'm setting it up, I do that because I can look at a spreadsheet, for example, and I can very easily see if all my account numbers make sense, if they're the right coding, and of course, make sure they're created as well. And then I can simply import the mapping and away I go. So those intercompany do to froms, very, very critical in order to make sure that your financials stay accurate and up to date. So let's pop over to 1 or 2 final items. We've walked through the basic setup of global dimension. We've walked through what your company's users can have access to, vendor files, customer files, and so on, who can have access to them. We've taken a look at the allocations, the do to froms, and finally, we could take a look at the entity location relation. And then we're going to get in to actually looking at those scenarios that Brian talked about. So you notice here, I've got, let's focus on company 200, for example. Only Blue Warehouse belongs here to company 200. So this is what this actually belongs here. But I could have access to other warehouses. So company 0, for example, has access to multiple warehouses. But in my back-end setup, this warehouse belongs to company 2. And you'll see how important that is when we get to looking at some transactions later on. So that's basically a high-level overview of the setup for multi-entity management for Business Central. For those of you that might have been used to know of the product in the GP world, which has been around about 18 years, there's a lot more to the setup to make it work. But BC makes it very, very simple with the extension capability to get a company up and running. As you saw, 30 seconds, and company 500 was ready to go. And yeah, I could add a bank account later, worry about assigning my vendors and customers as I need to, and so on and so forth. But it's ready to go almost instantly. So let's take a look at that scenario number 1, the insurance allocation. Now we'll use the shortcuts. We'll go here to the purchase invoice. And I want active purchase invoices unposted. So I've got this Mundersan Corporation here. And I'll take a couple of minutes and explain what's different in this window compared to standard out-of-the-box Business Central. Up here in the header, you see a company code. Because we're not running, again, I'll explain it one more time, in different instances here, there's no way to guess what company this transaction would belong to. I have to tell the system. So we've added this field. This transaction is being originated in company 000. Now remember the allocations we just looked at a few minutes ago? There's an allocation template field here. If I want to put, for example, an insurance allocation and have that flow down through everything, every line item of my purchase invoice, I could do that. But let's leave it blank for now. See if I can get it to do it without it. So down at the bottom, you'll notice another modification to the window. Now we've got a company code at the line level as well. So if you think of the impact of that, I could have company 0 getting the payable, but company 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, if I could add line after line after line, all getting the expense, all right, and automatically taking that over, but the payable would stay here in this home company. So they would cut the check theoretically, although that's modifiable as well, and pay the bill. It would definitely show up in their aging. So we haven't done anything yet. So if I take a look at my distributions here, for any of the accountants that are listening in, I'm going to have a very simple 2-line distribution. So let's go take a look. I should have, if I haven't gone and changed something. So I've got my GL entity here. I've got, once that goes away, oh, that's interesting. Pause, it refreshes here. If I can let that go away here. It doesn't want to let it go away, does it? Leave this page. I'm going to go back, clean this out, and go back in, guys. So just bear with me for a second or two. No, it's not going to do it, Brian. Isn't that interesting? Okay, back here again. So we'll go back to my...
Ooh, the excitement of a live demo.
Oh, I know. It's very rare. Okay, hold on a second. Don't go away, guys. Let's bring that up again. I'm just going to clear it off here a little bit, refresh it, and bring it up again. And we'll continue on with that. So it should be about much more than a couple of minute delay, and we'll be back in action. All righty. And let's try that again. Go back to the purchase invoice. And once more. So hopefully we're all ready to roll. There we go. All right. So in this particular case, so I'm going to try it one more time. I'm going to take the chance. I've got this 1-line item here. I want to look at the preview of the posting. And if you look at it, it's a 2-line entry. And I should see 2 distributions, both for company 0, purchase and AP, nothing unusual there. So let's just do one extra thing here. Let's close this off. And let's add an allocation template, the insurance one that we were talking about. So there I go. I've got the insurance template in there. I'm going to go scroll through and make sure everything else is good. Looks good. All right. I'm going to leave it company 0. I'm not going to change anything there. All right. So let's go back and let's take a look at the posting now. All I've done is I've added the allocation template. And now look, that 2 lines has become 14 lines. Now, I know not everybody who's watching this will be an accountant, but let me explain quickly what's happening. The allocation template said take part of the purchase expense and assign it to each company who are going to take a share of that expense. So company 400 takes their percentage, company 300 takes their percentage, company 200, company 100, and that balance, that 30% we talked about earlier, company 0 is going to pick that up, and away it goes. So 100% allocation, the full $12,000 in one invoice, in one transaction. I have allocated that insurance bill to all the companies that are here. So imagine if you had a lot more than just 4 or 5 companies. Imagine if you had 40 or 50, how much work this will save, how much more accurate this will be. Basically, human error disappears, unless you've put the wrong allocation numbers in there. But just by doing that one allocation template, I've made this posting go across 5 different companies. If I back this off, I'm not going to do this, but if all of a sudden I said this was company 100, I would have another layer of allocations in there. Now, does that sound complex? Well, it is, but you as a user don't have to worry about it. Once you have configured multi-entity management for Business Central, it takes care of all those complications, all those do to, do froms automatically in the background with 0 user intervention required. So very, very, very powerful aspect of that. Show you one more thing. I'm going to get out of here now on this. Rather than create a really complicated invoice that might make no sense at all, I want to show you very quickly, and tied with the idea of the insurance allocation, let's go look at purchase invoice again, how easy it is even to search through and find information on invoices. Okay, so keep in mind, I've got all my companies now in the single instance. Maybe I've got 5 or 6, maybe I got 50 or 60, it doesn't matter. And somebody is looking for information on a particular invoice. Let's go find one. They give you this number, 108054. You have no idea what company it's in. All right, and there's this long list of posted purchase invoices. So 108054. Let's just hit that number. There it is. Notice the company code. That was in company 200. Could have been in company 600. Could have been in company 6,000. It doesn't make any difference to BC. BC does what it does. It goes and finds that document number. MEM does what it does. It tags on to the report the company code that follows that number. So not only can I make allocations and have that flow through to all my different entities, I can also search through all my different invoice documents, whether it be purchase or sales or a journal, and find particular transactions and instantly know what company they belong to. I do not have to know that information in advance. Let's go to scenario 2. We want to look at some reports. Let's pop them up. We'll just type multi-entity management here, and you notice, go to reports and analysis. There's 34 of them. If I click on that, you'll see a whole series of reports that we have built for Business Central, so you can get information out, consolidated fashion, or a grouping of any company combination that you want. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the report. This one's got the best visuals, the spread global. I'll pop it open. Now, as we're looking through at the options here, you notice I got my company, Global Dimension 1. I've got some filters here where I could go in and I could say, well, which companies do I want? I'm going to leave them all in for the purpose of the demo. And down here, I've got a lot of different filtering capabilities. If I scroll through all of these, you'll see the list can get very, very long, very, very quick. So you can really narrow this down to exactly what you want for exactly one company, a combination of companies, or all companies. So let's just preview this the way it is. Now, in about 10 to 15 seconds here, I'm going to get a report pop up, and that report is going to give me column by column by column this age information that I want for AP for all the companies that I have access to. Give it about another 5 seconds to see the report. And what I want you to notice when we're looking at the report, let's just make it just a little bit bigger. This is a SQL Server report, so I can download it if I want to an Excel file. But for the purpose of the presentation here, you'll notice I still have my total column. I have company 0, 1, 2, 3, and company 4. You notice what's not showing here, company 5, because I have not added it to my access rights. But let's do something a little interesting. Let's take this, close it off. Let's go back to my mem user. This time I will use a shortcut. So my user entity security. Now, when that pops up, let's go to me. And let's just simply take company 5, or company 4, pardon me, off the list. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm not going to log out. I'm not going to log out, log back in, any of that kind of stuff. And let's go back to my reports again. And we'll go back to my 34 reports and scroll down to the bottom, pick the same report. I'm not going to change anything, so I won't review it again. Let's just preview that particular report and see what it does for me. So we're talking about security here now. So you'll notice I have my totals column, company 0, company 1, company 2, company 3, no company 4. So before I only was missing company 5. Now I'm missing company 4 as well. So think of it, I'm the system administrator and I'm logging in, and based on the configuration that I actually set up for myself, I can't break it. I would have to go back into the configuration, assuming I have access rights to do that, and give myself access to company 400 and 500 in order for them to show up here. So very, very powerful report from that perspective. And it works in all the reports in a similar fashion. If I type the same thing in again, mem, let's just go look at one other report. And I really like the way this works as far as all the information from my setup. If I look at my very last report, or my vendor detail trial balance, again, not going to change anything. Let's just preview the report. Let it pop up here, and just to give you a flavor for what's happening, keeping in mind that I've got multiple companies running in a single instance or a single universe, whatever you want to call it, of Business Central. So you notice vendor detail trial balance by entity. My company code 0, 1, 2, 3, oh, not 4. Company 0, head office. If I was to scroll down through this, there's all my head office. All right, let's go to the next one. Company 100, East Coast Commercial, and so on and so on and so forth. Company 200. So it logically follows through everything that I've got access to. You never know that there's companies in this database that are there, but you can't see. You can't report on. You can't do transactions on. There's just no way to touch them. Now, if I want to give myself back access to that company, and you can probably guess where I'm going, user entity setup. And all I've got to do is go down to my administrator button and just pop in, and I've got access. But please keep in mind that this assumes that I have administrator rights to do this. No other regular everyday user can come in and make changes to this, obviously. But there I have. It's back to normal. So what do? We took an insurance allocation. We took that across 4 or 5 companies. Could have been 40 or 50 companies. It makes no difference. We only allocated a portion of it in the allocation ID itself or template itself. The rest was automatically allocated to who owned the document. We took a look at the document and recognized that on the header, you're going to have a company identifier. That's who owns the document. Much the same as if you were in a particular instance of BC, that company would own the document. We also noticed that at the line item, I could have each individual company taking their share of the expense. The payables goes to who owns the document, the head office. Now, if that was a sales invoice, same logic would apply. The receivable would go to the company on the header. But theoretically, there could be multiple line items, each assigned to a different company. They would get the revenue, but the receivable would go to the owner of the document. Scenario 2, we looked at some reports, recognized that all the reporting information is there. Now, I didn't say this as we were looking at the numbers, but understand that if I eliminate a company, as I did, it also adjusts the total column on that global report. So the total column reflects only the companies that I have access to. I add back in another company, that total column changes to reflect what my new access levels are. Look how easy it was to remove myself from a company access. I just simply had to uncheck, and that was it. The user doesn't have to sign in and sign out. They just will no longer be able to do any transactions to that company. Now, I've added a company 500. Maybe I added that and the CFO comes along and says, not this year, we're going to change that. So let's go back to my dimensions. Very, very simple process. Let's find my company code. All right, so I'm going to go back and drill down on my dimension values here. And there's my company. Whoops, wrong one. I do that every once in a while. Sorry about that, guys. Company, one more popping up there. Now let's try to look at my values. Might be a little bit different. So there's my company 500. I haven't done anything yet, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. And as simple as that, watch the message that pops up. All multi-entity management setups which are related to 500 will be deleted as well. Do you want to continue? That's not talking about data. If I've set up a company and I start doing transactions, that's one issue. But I've just simply set up the company, assigned it to different users, assigned vendors and customers to it, and then somehow, for some reason, we change our mind and we're not going to have that company. All it's going to do is make sure here that I understand that's eliminating all the setup issues I've done, not transactions. Click on yes. That's it. Company's gone. I'm back to just 4 companies. If I pop back out of here now, and one final thing to show you, if I climb into my mem users again, and just look at my, whoops, did I say that correctly? Yeah, user setup, sorry, my bad. And you notice there's no company 500. Really, really clean, really, really simple to manage. And again, assuming you haven't got any transactions yet. But hopefully you've gotten the idea from the presentation that MEM is extremely simple and efficient to set up in the BC environment, works very well. Security is absolute, both on vendors or customers or locations or items or bank accounts and on users as well. There's no way around it unless you're into the database. Of course, that's another world altogether. But there you go. That's the presentation of the basic setup and configuration and some functionality of MEM itself. Brian, back to you, sir.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Excellent job, as usual. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Actually, do you need to make me the presenter again, Don?
I will take a try, sir. See if I can do that. I might have to.
There we go. Okay, perfect.
I thought you were the boss.
Excellent. Never. It's not the case at work or at home. Anyways, time for a little Q&A. As I mentioned before, we are going to be, we're in listen-only mode, but I see that there is one question that's been logged. And honestly, it's probably the most, actually, it's the second most common question. The most common one is, can I get a copy of the slides or the recording? Yes, Ali will send those out to you afterwards in case you weren't able to make it live. You'll be able to see it afterwards. But the other question that comes up all the time pertains to people that have different functional currencies or calendars. Dawn, I know you're no stranger to this question. Do you want to tackle that?
Sure. Because we're sitting on a typical SQL database, there is a restriction. You cannot have different fiscal year ends for your companies in a single install, nor can you have different functional currencies. You're good on transactions. You can have transactions in any currency that BC handles. But functional currency, the rule is one functional currency per instance. Now, if I have 100 companies and 50 are Canadian, 50 are American as far as functional currency, I could eliminate that down to 2 instances. Still much more effective, but it has to be an instance for functional currency.
That's fair enough. And yeah, the reason why is SQL Server just doesn't know how to process that information if there's 2 different functional currencies or 2 different calendars. It just gets really confused. It makes reporting a nightmare. So yeah, don't do it, please. We urge you. That's why it's not supported. I don't actually see any other questions now, but that's fine. We're more than happy if they come up afterwards. You can let us know. Go ahead and get in touch with either Ali or whoever you talk to normally at the TM group, or reach out to me. There's my email address, Brian@BinaryStream. We would be happy to do just a one-on-one discovery call, make sure it's a good fit, go through your scenario in detail, and we can actually customize the demo a little bit. So obviously you've seen sample data today. If you want to make it a bit more meaningful with your items or your specific workflows, let us know what they are, and we'll be happy to try to build them out for you within our BC demo environment. So again, thanks very much to the TN group for putting this together. Don, thank you for your time, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. We'll end it here. Have a great day.
Take care.